All right. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us on this Peace Wave, 24-hour Peace Wave. Thank you, Part 7 from Hawaii and Guam. Part 6, Hawaii and Guam. Welcome to Part 7. So, let me just share my screen. All right. In here now. Okay, welcome to Part 7. So, in this part, would like to extend our sincerest gratitude um, to Liz and also to Allison and her granddaughter Ashley for pulling this part. We're very glad to have you in this Peace Wave Part 7 and to all the contributors for this part. Thank you so much. So, for this Part 7, to kick off our Part 7, I will turn over the floor now to Liz from New Zealand. Liz, are you here now in our call? Okay, she's here. Okay, let us just wait for Liz. So our tech support, kindly make Liz as a co-host. Thank you. Okay, hello Liz, can you hear us now?
Hello.
Yes, hi Liz, good morning. Or good afternoon in New Zealand.
Yes. We're beginning with a waiata from Perere, a beautiful song.
Mo te tamau i o tapu me ngāne hera pono me te māngai kai roto hei tau tuku mai ai ane kene. This is a song of peace and of manifestation of all of the good creations that we're about to go into. Ori Ori is the tribe, from my tribe, is a lullaby that you would sing before the conception of a child. You put all of your intention and all of your energy into manifesting the good, seeing the necessary, and applying those things in a voice or vocal form of waiata or song. When we say waiata, we talk about reflection, and when we sing, it reflects and projects forth those intentions that come from the inside of us. I wrote this song from an ancient chant called Pine Pine Te Kura, and I wrote it to manifest my child. I was struggling to have a child with my partner at the time, and so we went deep, and I wrote this lullaby to my baby, and her name is Te Kura Aio, and so is the name of the song. It means the gift of peace. And I dedicate it to all of those wahine that are pregnant right now. Pine pine te kura, hau te kura, whanake te kura I raro I awaru. O te kura nui, o te kura roa, o te kura tawhiti nā tū hei pō. Pine pine te kura, hau te kura, whanake te kura I raro I awaru. O te kura nui, o te kura roa, o te kura tawhiti nā tū hei pō. Kia ta pātahi, kia te tahira. Nau mai ki te toi, huare wā. E pinde te kura, te kura, whanake te kura I raro I awarua. Ko te kura nui, ko te kura roa, ko te kura o tawhiti, ko te kura ai o. Ai o ki te rangi, ai o ki te whenua, ai o ki a tātou katoa. Tūturu o whiti whau, whakamaua kia tīna, tīna. Aumi e, hui e, I, tai ki e. Kia ora tātou. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. Kia ora from Aotearoa. We love you and we love the connections that we have with you. Let's keep them unique and let's share them like the rivers flow to the sea. Mauri ora ki a tātou katoa.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Perere King, for that beautiful, beautiful waiata. And you may not know this, but Perere won a national competition on Māori television. What was it called?
5 minutes of fame.
For musicians, it's called 5 Minutes of Fame. And so we're very, very blessed to have him with us today. So tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's just wonderful to be part of this global peace wave going around the globe when we so need peace. And this hour here is dedicated to the memory of two very special people that we have lost recently. One is Pat McGill, who was an incredible community worker for social justice. He died a few weeks ago at age 96. And he was all about kinder, fairer communities and the environment. And also we lost another beautiful kuia, Whaia Aki Paipa, Ngāti Kaungunu, Wahine Toa, water warrior, and who died last week. And she was also, was just with us earlier on. You'll see her actually in one of our videos collecting a peace po. Great supporter of peace and an understanding of global, what it means to be a global citizen here. I really want to thank my co-creator, Ashley Galbraith from Otago University Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies in Dunedin. I know that Ashley's been having a few technical problems and I'm not actually sure if, oh yes, I think she is. Can you wave? Can you wave, Ashley, if you're here? I think you're a co-host, aren't you? Yeah, here she is. Wave, Ashley. It's always quite a mission putting these things together, you know. Anyway, we're going to start also. Ashley, will you have the first video of Meriaina, Hirangi? Ready, or shall I play it?
If you could play that one, it's good. I'm actually not appearing as a host on my end, so I don't think I'll be able to share my screen.
Can the technical people please make Ashley a co-host?
Yeah, she is in co-host now. You can try Ashley.
Cool, thanks for that.
Yeah, and I apologize, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Liz Rem as well, and I'm in Hiratonga, Hamuana, Te Mata a Maui, Hawke's Bay, New Zealand, Aotearoa, Ngāti Kaungunu country. And there's a storm brewing, there's a storm raging outside. We suffered from a cyclone not that long ago, and the storm is still raging on. It's very wet. So Ashley, if you were able to play our first beautiful video, which follows on from Pareri's blessing on our day. Miriana Hirangi is a great niece of Princess Tapuia Hirangi, who was another wahine toa. She had a huge stand for peace, and when the First World War was going on, she would not let her people, did not want her people to go and perish in war. So she used to go, and they were put in prison, and she used to go and visit them and take care of them. So over to you, Ashley.
Just give me one moment.
How was everyone today? Anyway, just say hello to us. Say hi, put your name in the chat, say hello, where you're from, and here we go. Here's Miriana. Ashley,
yeah. If you will try to, when you share the video, kindly share also the share sound in Zoom settings so we can hear the sound of the video. Currently, we cannot hear it.
Okay.
maybe if you click
I'll just stop there and try sharing again.
Yeah, and maybe if you can make it full screen, Ashley, please.
All right. Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully this will do it.
Rangaranga te pō, rangaranga te ao. Ki te whai ao, ki te ao marama e. Ka tū au I raro I te maru o ngā tūpuna kei wainganui a koutou. Nau mai whakatau mai rā ki te taha o tō mātou mokopuna mo tēnei kaupapa nui o te ao. I stand under the shelter of our tupuna, our ancestors, who are with us today and every day, and I invite them to guide and support this conversation for peace throughout the world. Before we continue, let me clear the way and set the intention for all those present, both seen and unseen. Whakawātea te Māori. Hūtea te whāha aio, ngā o te au ia whānau whakawhirinaki, wau te ira I te hihiri, ai o tia te ahi ko haumako, ai o te pai haumako, ai o te pai ngā whā, ai o te ururu tawakina, wātea te aio, rire hau, pai mārire, ka pai. Ko wai au. Ko taupiri te maunga, ko waikato te awa, ko tūranga waiwai te marae, ko pōtatau te wherowhero te tangata. Taupiri is my mountain, Waikato is my river, tūranga waiwai is my marae, and pōtatau te wherowhero is my ancestor. Ko mere aina he rangi ahau. My name is Mere Aina Hirangi. Sister to my great-grandfather, Te Puia Kirihai Hirangi was a leader who gave hope to the helpless, strength to the weak, spoke with purpose, and led with an iron fist and a velvet glove. The epitome of mana wahine, powerful woman. At the outbreak of World War I, Māori from Taranaki, Maniapoto and Waikato resisted the call to fight for king and country because our lands had been confiscated in the 1860s as punishment for rebellion against the crown, and the wounds were still very, very fresh. Nana Te Puia maintained that her grandfather, Kingi Tāwhiao, had forbidden Waikato from taking up arms again when he made peace with the crown in 1881. Tāwhiao was a pacifist and a man of peace and non-violence, unlike his father and forefathers who followed the traditions of Tūmatauenga, the atua, the god of war. Nana Te Puia was determined to uphold his call to Waikato to lie down and not allow blood to flow from this time on. Te Puia maintained that Waikato had its own king and had no need to fight for the British king. She proposed that if confiscated land were returned, Waikato might reconsider its position. When police officers came to arrest the men who refused conscription, Te Puia welcomed them into the whare, the meeting house, and gave them an opportunity to speak. Te Puia then rose to reply, first greeting the people present and the police party. Then she said, "These people are my people. My voice is their voice. I will not agree to my children going to shed blood. Though your words be strong, you will not move me to help you. The young men who have been balloted will not go. You can fight your own fight until the end." Many of my ancestors were imprisoned and taken to Auckland for refusing to go to war. Nana Te Puia would take them whatever food she could find, whatever she could gather, and sit for hours outside the prison walls, singing her songs of resistance, resilience, and love to boost the morale and give courage to her people. I leave you with her words. Ka moe moe a hau, ko auanaki. Ka moe moe a tātou, ka tae a tātou. If I dream alone. If we all dream, we can achieve. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, pai mārire. Rangaranga te pō, ranga.
Oh, she hadn't quite finished, Ashley. No?
No, I think she had it, just the video looped back to the beginning straight away.
Okay, lovely. Okay, thank you. That was our wonderful friend Mariana from Naruawahia. So next we are going to go to Wellington. Wanaki and Fee Day and Peter Daly are ready for a little treat. They are up at the community garden up at the old prison. Now, Fee, you need to unmute and you need to make sure that you're a co-host so we can spotlight you. Are you there, Fee? I can see you clapping. Fee? Oh, here she is. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Sorry, Fee, I'm got to carry on with the program, but that was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, that was lovely. Live performance from Wellington, from the old prison gardens. Let's give them a hand. Thank you, Peter Daly. I wish we had more time. So our next contribution comes recorded from Flaxmere Te Aranga Marae in Hastings. And it's our special gifting ceremony that we had for the Peace Polls. So Ashley, let's take it away. So we are planting seeds for the future, and we are looking forward to working together. And Hastings, Hiratonga, Napier Hawke's Bay, let's make our region a vision, an inspiration for the whole of Aotearoa of what peacemaking and living in non-violence can look like. We can be leaders. That's what we do in this area with our wonderful, visionary, hard-working leaders and our amazing people and our connection that we have. So that is the winner, that is the challenge, that is our task. Okay, fantastic. So we're moving on down to the South Island, now to Christchurch, and we have a contribution from Otatahi, from the Quakers in Christchurch.
Peace is fairness.
Fairness, great. Thank you. Say that again, please.
Peace of quiet day.
A quiet day. Nice.
Peace is quiet.
Peace is glowing golden stillness.
Right.
The peace I'm looking for is a peace which thinks of the whole world, not just us as humans, but every aspect of our existence, that which we help to happen, that which we live because it happens, the animals, the insects. In fact, peace for me is with the whole universe, not just our Earth, not just the other planets we know, but everything that we're connected with. Peace, our very existence depends upon it.
Thank you.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Okay. Thank you, Christchurch, Otatahi. So we next are coming back to Wellington, and as you know, the whole theme of this peace wave is to stop militarization and military countries cooperating just in military ways. So the No to AUKUS campaign has been raging in Aotearoa. Maybe raging is too strong a word, but here we've got a really short clip of a group of people who have been vigiling regularly, and this particular piece of video, it's very short, is outside the Labour Party conference in Wellington recently, and the Labour Party is the ruling party of Aotearoa at the moment. So that just gives you a little taste of what's going on, and that campaign is building up. It really is. So our next contribution is from a dear friend, Deirdre McMenamin, and it's called Lay Down Your Arms. And this project was started 30 years ago in the height of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And the words lay down your arms is based on the handshake, the sign of peace, which came originally from meaning that a knight won't use his sword against you. So hence that's why you shake the right hand. So Deirdre started off making sculptural handshakes by casting the arms of people active in the Troubles to create a better future for all of the children. Now it's stretched to a worldwide campaign for peace. And in this video, Deirdre will show you how to make an arm cast. It's also a lovely healing process that fosters peace and allows gentle dialogue for those in conflict. If you would like to cast your own arm or the arms of people in conflict, please email kindergarten for the letter 4 grown-ups @gmail.com. And I'll put this address in the chat here. Deirdre would love to hear from you. And so, yeah, anyway, let's have a little look at this process.
Kia ora, welcome. Lovely to see you. Thank you very much for joining this, the second Peace Wave for World Beyond War. And some of you might know I've been running a campaign called Lay Down Your Arms for about 30 years that started in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. But took me a while, but I finally figured out that actually peace starts with me. So I'm going to show you a wee technique, how to do it, how to do lay down your arms, and but to start with yourself, because ultimately peace starts with ourselves. So the first thing to do, big deep breath. Another big deep breath. And you can keep on doing that. Now, what I've got here, all the tools you need: some plaster bandage, here, some olive oil, or we have in the past used Vaseline sometimes for, you know, smoothing down the hairs, but obviously we don't want to do that now because of the impact that petrochemicals are having on the planet. So we're just going to go for oil. Any vegetable oil will do, and some warm water. And we're blessing that water with all our hopes and prayers and wishes for peace in the world. And we start off really, really simply by just covering the arm with the oil. Now, when we did it, we asked people who were in conflict if they would let us cast their arms. And so that's the idea, is that we sit down with somebody who is in conflict or in an opposite position, really, and work with them to cast their arms. And the reason that we do that is for a few reasons. One is because whenever there's a terrible shooting or bombing or something like that, there's always the calling for the laying down of arms. But actually, you know, arms don't operate, guns and things like that, they don't operate on their own. They need somebody to pull the trigger. So we'll just start by looking at our own practical hands and what we can do. So we're basically covering the, put a good, nice covering right all over the arm. And then when you're ready, there's a pair of scissors here for cutting up the plaster bandage as well. And when you've got the arm covered, you use your blessed water. Now the reason that we use blessed water is the thing that we need more than anything else probably. But by blessing that water, then by doing that, we're actually adding a prayer that's going to go out and continue into the universe. Then we dip the plaster bandage into the water, and then we can start to smooth it off. Now the other thing to remember about arms is that the lay down your arms is based on, or healing hands is based on, is actually that the arms are the sign of peace, and a handshake is the sign of peace. So if you shake hands with somebody, you're basically saying that you're not going to use your sword against that person, which is pretty cool if you want peace. So there you go. That's another option for you to try. And basically that's all you do. You just start laying down your plaster bandage in the water first, and then on your arm. But what that does do is it gives you some time to sit calmly with someone and listen to them and hear their story and begin to understand that, you know, we might all operate in the same world. We might have completely different understandings of the world, but we're all connected. We're all human. We have different hopes and dreams and different fears and different situations. And when we understand that, then we can build a world that actually reflects that difference and makes it more possible for us all to navigate that world together peacefully. So there you go, that's all it is. So think about who you can cast, but also don't underestimate the impact of making peace with yourself, you know, because when we do that, then the magic really happens. So I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Now, there's people in 10 different countries who are going to be casting over the next few months. If you want to join them and you want to have a cast, then just let me know at kindergartenforgrownups@gmail.com, and we'll give you any other support that you need. And pretty much that's about it. Oh, the other thing to remember as well is if you put the plaster along here, this part, this is directly connected to our inner child emotionally. And so by soothing this particular area, we're soothing ourselves and we're soothing the other person's inner child, which again aids healing. And after things like COVID, everybody's been poked and prodded and pushed around, you know, and so this is a really nice way of reconnecting with people and, you know, just remembering that we're all in this together and we can make peace. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Deidre. That's awesome. And Deidre wanted me to say as well that there's been some scientific research which is also saying the similar thing about the power of healing touch. So next we come to some friends in Heretaunga and Hastings who are part of the Anthroposophical Society, the Steiner community, and they've been doing some actions in Hastings in the garden. So let's got some videos here with Angela. Thank you, Angela.
Here I am at the Rudolf Steiner Centre celebrating our peace pole, which we managed to get erected the day before Anzac Day to celebrate peace in the world. There are so many people feeling tension at the moment, tension between each other and relationships and families and communities. And when we work with that tension, when we face it, when we talk about it, we can come to a peaceful solution. So my hope is that we are willing to do that we don't run from it, we don't hide from it, we don't freeze in the face of tension, but we are willing to talk about it and come to a place where we can feel love again. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. We have another video now, similar place. Is that coming along, Ashley?
Yep. Share it now.
He maunga rongo ki te whenua. Here I am standing here in Heretaunga, Hastings, to relive and to extend the dream of Masai Sagoi and his dream to live peace and to live peacefully. And I wanted to bring to our attention I Am Māori, and this is a tohu of doing I Am Māori, which envelops that peace by doing the challenge of a 3.8 kilometre swim, 188 kilometres by bike, and then a 42k run. And it doesn't matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what shape or size you are, but you have to go through a battle, and that battle is internal. And that battle that we go through that wairua of Tangaroa, Papatūānuku and Tāwhiri, helps us to live this dream, helps us to come to find that peace. Not easy, but something that I'm here today to tautoko. E maunga rongo ki te whenua, kia tō.
Fantastic, thank you. And Ashley, there's a third one, very short one from Linda. Have you got that there, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
I was intrigued when this pole appeared at the corner of my street in the grounds of the Anthroposophical Society, and so was delighted to have a conversation with Angela about it and have her request me could I create a little kurawai to dress the pole with for this winter season. So I was only too happy to be part of this, making this prominent in our neighbourhood, the pole, this pole. And as it happened, I had all the resources on hand already for me to just very quickly make something, and I'm delighted to be able to adorn our pole for the winter season, and hope that it just brings that little bit more attention to the pole and what it stands for.
And what does it stand for in your mind, Linda?
The ultimate, really, peace, which has to only come from the opening of our hearts.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It would be great if we had peace poles on every street corner, inspiring, interesting and challenging people. So our next video is also, it's the Quaker peace testimony, which was created in the 1980s. And at the recent annual gathering of Quakers, there was, we recited it as a group of people, and then it was updated in 2014, which was the centenary of World War I, which connected with our Anzac Day in Australia and New Zealand. For some reason, one of our national days is the day when we lost a lot of soldiers on Turkish at Gallipoli in Turkey, fighting for the British Empire in World War I. So this is quite a long one. It's about 10 minutes, and I hope you enjoy it. It starts with a mihi from Niwa Short, and then the testimony is recited. Thank you, Ashley.
Kia ora tātou. Tia tahi kia ino ia ki nei a hau paku nei, hara I te mea he whai kōrero tēnei, ngari he kawātea I a tātou. He onore he kōria le manga arongo ki tunga ki te mata, ki ngā kāro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa. Me hanga ia te atia he ngā kauho ki roto ki tēnā o mātou. Katoa mea tō wairua tapu hei āpina hei arataki, hei tohu I a mātou katoa. I roto I tēnei ninga ko te hāhi tūhau wiri tēnei. Nā era tēnā koutou katoa, tēnā tātou katoa. Oh, kia ora te, whakai tēnā kai punāte. Nā reira, kai te hui ake tātou I tēnei rā, ka nui te mihi kia tātou katoa. I nui atana ki aku tipuna, te aroha mai ki tēnei wā koutou mokopuna, e hara mea e whai kōrero tēnei. Engari koira ngā tika ngā tūhoi, kai te mau tūturu a ki tērā. Nā reira, kia ora tātou hea tāhua tēnei hui. Kai te kiti ake au I ngā tuhituhinga, ko tātou katoa tēnei. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora.
We, the Friends in Aotearoa New Zealand, send loving greetings to all the people in this country and ask you to consider this statement addressed to you, to which we all agree as one. The time has come for us to take an unequivocal public stand on the question of violence. We totally oppose all wars, all preparation for war, all use of weapons and coercions by force, and all military alliances. No end could ever justify such means.
We equally and actively oppose all that leads to violence among peoples and nations, and violence to other species and to our planet. This has been our testimony to the whole world for over 3 centuries. We are not naive or ignorant about the complexity of our modern world and the impact of sophisticated technologies, but we see no reason whatsoever to change or weaken the vision of the peace that everyone needs in order to survive and flourish on a healthy, abundant earth.
The primary reason for this stand is our conviction that there is that of God in everyone, which makes each person too precious to damage or destroy. While someone lives, there is always the hope of reaching that of God within them. Such hope motivates our search to find non-violent resolution of conflict. Peacemakers are also empowered by that of God in them. Our individual human skills, courage, endurance, and wisdom are vastly augmented by the power of the loving spirit that connects all people.
Refusal to fight with weapons is not surrender. We are not passive when threatened by the greedy, the cruel, the tyrant, the unjust. We will struggle to remove the causes of impasse and confrontation by every means of non-violent resistance available. There is no guarantee that our resistance will be any more successful or any less risky than the military tactics. At least our means will be suited to our end. If we seem to fail finally, we would still rather suffer and die than inflict evil in order to save ourselves and what we hold dear.
If we succeed, there is no loser or winner, for the problem that led to conflict would have been resolved in a spirit of justice and tolerance. Such a resolution is the only guarantee that there will be no further outbreak of war when each side has regained strength. The context in which we take the stand at this time is the increasing level of violence around us: child abuse, rape, wife battering, street assaults, riots, video and television sadism, silent economic and institutional violence, the prevalence of torture, the loss of freedom, sexism, racism and colonialism, the terrorism of both guerrillas and government soldiers, and the diversion of vast resources of funds and labour from food and welfare to military purposes.
But above and beyond all this, it is insane stockpiling of nuclear weapons which could, in a matter of hours, destroy everyone and everything that we value on our planet. To contemplate such a horror can leave us feeling despairing or apathetic, hardened or blasé. We urge all New Zealanders to have courage to face up to the mess humans are making of our world, and to have faith and diligence to cleanse it and restore the order intended by God. We must start with our own hearts and minds. Wars will stop only when each of us is convinced that war is never the way. Places to begin acquiring the skills and maturity and generosity to avoid or to resolve conflicts are in our own homes, our personal relationships, our schools, our workplace, and wherever decisions are made.
We must relinquish the desire to own other people, to have power over them, and to force our views on them. We must own up to our own negative side and not look for scapegoats to blame, punish, or exclude. We must resist the urge towards waste and the accumulation of possessions. Conflicts are inevitable and must not be repressed or ignored, but worked through painfully and carefully. We must develop the skills of being sensitive to oppression and grievances, sharing power in decision-making, creating consensus, and making reparation. In speaking out, we acknowledge that we ourselves are as limited and as erring as anyone else. When put to the test, we each may fall short.
We do not have a blueprint for peace that spells out every stepping stone towards the goal that we share. In any particular situation, a variety of personal decisions could be made with integrity. We may disagree with the views and actions of the politician or the soldier who opts for a military solution, but we still respect and cherish the person. What we call for in this statement is a commitment to make the building of peace a priority and to make opposition to war absolute.
What we advocate is not uniquely Quaker, but human, and we believe the will of God. Our stand does not belong to friends alone. It is yours by birthright. We challenge New Zealanders to stand up and be counted on what is no less than the affirmation of life and the destiny of humankind. Together, let us rejoice, reject the clamour of fear and listen to the whisperings of hope.
On the eve of the commemoration of World War I, Quakers in Aotearoa, New Zealand, are concerned that history is not reinvented to glorify war. This is from Lest We Forget, made by Yearly Meeting 2014. We remember the loss of life, the destruction of the environment, the courage of soldiers, dissenters, and conscientious objectors. We remember all those who still suffer the ongoing trauma of war.
We also note the increasing use of scarce resources for war. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, over $10 million a day is now being spent, or now 120 million per week, is now being spent to maintain our armed forces in a state of combat readiness. We actively support alternative processes for resolving conflicts and violence, both within and between nations.
Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangi mai e, tātou reno, te
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so thank you for that. So we're coming to the end of that hour. We've got a contribution from the Iranian Solidarity Group, and it's the song Bare by Shervin Hajipour, which was inspired by the Women, Life and Freedom movement after Mahsa Amini got killed for what she was wearing. So we will just carry on with that one now.
Pero
برای توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم خواهرت خواهرامون، برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن، برای شرمندگی برای بیپولی، برای حسرت یک زندگی معمولی، برای کودک زبالگرد و آرزوهاش، برای این اقتصاد دستوری، برای این هوای آلوده، برای ولیعصر و درخت‌های فرسوده، برای پیروز و احتمال انقراضش، برای سگ‌های بیگناه ممنوعه، برای گریه‌های بیوقفه، برای ترس و برای آینده، برای این بهشت اجباری، برای نخبه‌های زندانی، برای کودکان افغانی، برای همه برای غیر تکراری، برای همه شعارهای تو خالی، برای آوار خونه‌های پوشالی، برای احساس آرامش، برای خورشید پس از شبای طولانی، برای قرصای اعصاب و بیخوابی، برای مرد میهن آبادی، برای دختری که آرزو داشت پسر بود، برای زن زندگی آزادی، برای آزادی، برای آزادی.
Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you everybody for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure to be here with you all, and I'm really looking forward to handing over to my colleague Alison in Australia, in Sydney, who's been working really hard, and Alison and I are both on the board of World Beyond War. So kia ora. Thank you.
Kia ora, Liz, and to the New Zealand. Thank you. Kia ora, right? Kia ora, Liz, Ashley, and to the New Zealand team, to all the contributors and participants for this party. Such a wonderful creation of all your peace activities. Thank you for the waves of peace that you give us today in the global peace wave, and we wish you and everyone safe in the country as the storm passes by. And once again, thank you so much, Liz, for leading this part. And now we're going to move on and pass our peace wave to Australia. So to give us the opening remarks, we would all like to welcome Alison for her opening remarks. Alison, the peace wave is yours. I think Alison's trying to connect. Hello, Alison. Did you hear us?
You're on mute, Alison. You need to unmute.
Okay, that's better. It said the host was going to do that, but I had to do it. Anyway, what I just said was, I'm coming to you from Sydney, Australia, the home of the oldest First Nations people in the world. And it's a sunny Sunday here in Sydney, sunny in the midwinter. And today I hope you're going to enjoy meeting a few politicians, filmmakers, journalists, singers, international relations specialists, and see a few Australian demonstrators, all of whom want peace. All of them oppose the AUKUS agreement, in which Australia is now locked with the United States and the United Kingdom. We are hoping to reverse the American takeover of Australia that represents. We are behind the 8 ball, and we look forward to as much international support in that as we can possibly get. I'm going to let you now see our pre-screened, pre-prepared hour of content, and I really hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
Thank you, Alison. We're preparing it now. Okay. Yes. Let us proceed in seeing the New Zealand contribution for the Peace Fair. Now we can see their video that they prepared for us. Inshallah, kindly play the video. Thank you.
I'm Alison Bronowski, and I'm a member of World Beyond War. I'm also a member of Australians for War Powers Reform. You're going to hear a bit more about that in the next hour. What else you're going to hear about, particularly, is AUKUS. You may not know what AUKUS is. It's an acronym for Australia, US, UK, and some people say it ought to be pronounced you sucker, because it's a deal under which Australia pays a large amount of money for a large amount of military hardware to the United States and the United Kingdom for very little tangible benefit. And that is one of the issues that a lot of our speakers in this next hour will be concentrating on. And there are pictures of their demos, and there are songs, and there are all kinds of public events, bits of which we're going to bring to you in this next hour. First of all, we're going to have my dear friend and relative, in fact, Mary Alice Ballinger, to give a welcome to country on the Gadigal people's land of the Eora Nation in First Nations terms in Australia. Welcome, Mary.
In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and acknowledge the continuing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to land, water and communities, places of age-old ceremonies, of celebration and renewal. We pay respect to their elders past, present and future and celebrate them today in NAIDOC Week 2023. Taking from their site, across every generation, elders are familial guides, cultural knowledge holders, trailblazers, and so much more. Their tenacity and strength has carried the survival of First Nations people, and we thank them for that. We also extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining today's Peace Wave. We acknowledge their unique contribution to the life of these lands, their law, traditions, and customs that nurtured and continue to nurture the land and water that sustain us today. We recognise that First Nation sovereignty was never ceded. This continent always was and always will be Aboriginal land, a land that was taken by force and has been retained by force and indiscriminately divided and scoured and depleted. So we must also acknowledge the damage that has been done to these ancient lands and its peoples, mining minerals that living things should never be exposed to, testing bombs and forever chemicals in remote but populated areas, terrible acts in the name of peace. So very recently, modern Australia is learning that our land is ancient and ensnared, not young and free, made up of many lands, not just one, and we're only beginning to recognise that its custodians are wise, not ignorant, on managing its resources and avoiding its dangers. Despite rejecting these people, we have benefited from their knowledge in so many ways. It is not surprising to find that many of our highways follow ancient songlines. Wide tracks trodden over time, with resting places along the way, cultivated to provide safe shelter and bountiful food. These routes were maintained by regular use, burning off and clearing techniques. And the songs tell of a connection between land and spirit. They're not just highways, although that's how we treat them now. Two that you may be familiar with take us from Buduri in Jervis Bay, safely up the coast, or guide us inland over the mountains to Warang in Sydney Cove. We've begun the journey of slowing the destruction of land and culture, but we have so much farther to go. Paths are not found, they are made by walking them. So let us draw on First Nations knowledge and experience and Indigenous ways of knowing to accelerate this change and join together as community thinkers in this peace wave today.
So here's our program for today. I want to introduce David Bradbury, who's a terrific Australian documentary filmmaker. His firm is called Frontline Films, and he has a great new movie out, of which you're going to see a segment later on. It's called The Road to War. That's just been screened in Australia for the first time. After him, you're going to see Mary Kostakidis, one of my friends who used to be a presenter on SBS television, talking with Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, retired US Army Colonel and former Chief of Staff to United States Secretary of State Colin Powell. As well, we have Kelly Tranter, a colleague of mine, both of us stood for the WikiLeaks party years ago. She's a lawyer and a human rights activist and a member of AWPR, which I mentioned at the beginning. We have Brian Toohey, who's a veteran investigative journalist, editor, author, and a brilliant commentator on Australian defence matters. Vince Scapatura, who teaches with me at Macquarie University, International Relations. Bob Carr, another friend who is former Premier of New South Wales, former Foreign Minister of Australia, and another critic of the way Australian defence and foreign policy is headed. Following him, you'll hear from and see David Shoebridge, who is a senator from New South Wales for the Greens Party, and another Greens senator as well, Jordan Steele John, who comes from Western Australia. He too has been pressing for reform of the way Australia goes to war. He has picked up that agenda from his party, which has been running it for several years. As well, a name that's probably familiar to some of you, Peter Garrett, a musician, environmentalist, activist, and himself a former senator too, who has many things to say that are relevant to all of this. Another speaker you'll hear from is Michael West. He's an investigative journalist too. He runs Michael West Media, and he does terrific interviews with all sorts of people, including another speaker, Rex Patterson, who was at one time a submariner before he too became a senator for South Australia. He's not in the parliament any longer, but he's still pronouncing on the whole idea of whether Australia needs to be armed to the teeth with submarines. I have a surprise for you at the very end of the program. It will be musical, and we will conclude with that, and you'll find out what it is when we get there. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy it.
I'll let you tell the story, David. How has this film managed to land at a time when we seem to be having so many of the conversations nationally that you're focusing on?
Well, I think it's just serendipitous that
I've been making this film for the last 8 months or so, interviewing some top military and political strategists on the east coast of Australia that really informed me and informed the film that I've organically put together, which is very take-home message is that if we're not careful, we're going to be dragged into a war with China, our biggest trading partner, which will very quickly turn nuclear.
As a Trident II re-enters the atmosphere at speeds of up to Mach 24, it splits into up to 8 independent re-entry vehicles, each with a 100 or 475 kiloton nuclear warhead.
Also don't carry a torch, and none of these people I interviewed carry a torch for China and what it's done with its own minorities and what it's done with Hong Kong. None of us believe that China is bent upon invading Australia or setting up bases in the South Pacific.
A full salvo from an Ohio-class submarine, which can be launched in less than 1 minute, could unleash up to 192 nuclear warheads to wipe 24 cities off the map.
They were going to make a commitment, most likely to committing hundreds of billions of dollars of taxpayer money into these nuclear-propelled submarines, which takes us into another league altogether. We are, in effect, becoming a nuclear middle power. Now, while the government is at pains to stress that the nuclear subs are not going to be having nuclear missiles on board, they still will be nuclear reactor driven, and that is enriched bomb-making materials.
Thanks very much. Nearly everything this government says about nukes is ludicrous and highly deleterious. I'll give some brief examples. Despite the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, saying that Australia will not participate in a war over Taiwan, Yu White, a former Deputy Secretary of Defence, says the US would never sell nuclear submarines to Australia in these circumstances. They won't sell these nukes because they need them. They're in their line of battle. So without guarantees that we will always use them in a US war, they won't sell them. We need to get clear out of this that Australian sovereignty does not exist. Miles now says the subs are not for war, but to protect Australian merchant shipping. 26,000 cargo ship movements to and from Australia occur each year. Nuclear submarines have terrible maintenance problems, and if we buy the expected 3 from America before 2040, only 1 is likely to be operationally available at any one time, and probably none. 1 or none can't protect 26,000 cargo ship movements, but the mainstream journalists swallow all of this nonsense.
Thank you very much, Kelly, and thank you very much to the previous speakers for those very informative and enlightening comments. And also thank you, I'd like to extend my thanks also to the organisers of tonight's very important and urgent event. So, as Kelly mentioned, the brief that I've been given is to talk about my thoughts on the implications of the Defence Strategic Review. Now, I can only speculate about this, of course, because the review hasn't been released yet. It's not expected until early next month, as Kelly mentioned. However, I don't think it's too difficult to discern what the basic framework of the review is going to be, because it's not really intended to be a genuine independent review that will offer fearless and frank advice to the government based on sound evidence. Rather, the review was commissioned, in my opinion, to provide a rationalisation for a defence policy that has more or less already been decided. The independent leads charged with undertaking the review are established insiders, not known for challenging government orthodoxies, and they won't give much time to undertake a comprehensive review anyway. None of the submissions were made public. There were consultations, but with a narrow band of mainly foreign defence contractors, internal security agencies, and think tanks closely aligned with government thinking like the Australian Strategic Policy Institute and the US Studies Centre. In other words, the review was set up to ensure an outcome that would adhere to a set of narrow parameters that were preordained. So, what were those parameters? Well, Defence Minister Richard Marles made those parameters clear, I think, in a couple of key addresses in November last year. The first was to the Submarine Institute, and the second was to the Sydney Institute. And Marles has since repeated these basic parameters or these basic strategic assumptions that I think will underpin the Defence Strategic Review many times elsewhere since then. And I think they've been echoed too in the remarks by both Brian and Alison. Essentially, according to Marles, the narrative is that because of deteriorating regional strategic circumstances, which basically means the rise of China, the security which our geographical isolation has afforded us up until now can no longer be assumed. For the first time since the Second World War, or at least the 1970s when the so-called Defence of Australia doctrine emerged, we now face the prospect of a direct threat to Australia within a 10-year timeline, and which requires a significant military build-up to confront. Now, it's important to dwell on that point for a moment, because although I believe it's a misleading narrative and misleading assessment, it actually reveals an important truth. The alliance has never fundamentally been about defending Australia against a high-level direct military attack, because we've never really faced one. In fact, there's a very good case to make that the threats that we have faced as a nuclear target during the Cold War and at present, terrorism after 9/11, and today with the threat of war with China, only existed or were exacerbated at the very least because of our alliance with the United States.
At the end of the Cold War, all checks on that imperial interregnum, if you will, were released. There was no one in the world who could check the United States of America anymore, and therefore both political parties, with some differences which we can get into, I think that's significant today, especially for Australia, have been embarked on that imperial writ. Our security and foreign policy today is to secure the imperial writ. It's to make sure the United States has no challengers in the world. If you read the national security strategy we put out in George W. Bush's administration, you will see that we say no one will challenge us. And we're perfectly prepared to use military power to stop that challenge from coming. And many of the neoconservatives who crafted much of this strategy will tell you that if they see someone in the world who even vaguely looks like they might challenge U.S. power locally, regionally, or internationally, we're going to take them out. And usually we're going to use military power to do that. Now that imperium is coming to some screeching halt in some ways right now because we can't feel the forces that we need to enforce it.
Thank you too for the acknowledgement. I too acknowledge this is Gadigal land and our collective obligation to work together with First Nations peoples who have a lot to teach us about peace and non-violence, and work together with them for treaty and truth and true national justice. So this land always was and always will be First Nations land. We're gathered here 20 years on from a war that started from a series of lies. And we're gathered here, as we gather here, the most powerful forces in the media, the weapons industry and the political class are also gathering, but they're not gathering for peace. They're baying for war, and we must all be alarmed. Because 20 years ago, we went to war on a lie, and as Alison points out, we went to war without the Parliament ever having a say. No democratic oversight, no asking of the Australian people, no permission being sought from Parliament, and all based on a lie delivered to us by our US overlords. And that followed a concerted campaign from the very same groups who are baying for war right now. That campaign has sent the US and its allies, including Australia into what was a devastating and ultimately failed war with Iraq, from which the Middle East and much of the world has never recovered, and indeed I'd say the United States has never recovered. And we're now at the 20th anniversary of that illegal invasion of Iraq, and we must learn from what happened. We owe that to the hundreds of thousands of Iraqis who lost their lives as a direct result of the violence. The over 1 million Iraqis who are still displaced as refugees and who have a government that still can't provide their basic material needs or basic security, all from a war of aggression that our government, on our behalf, took part in based on a lie without ever asking us. So unless we learn from that history and demand accountability, then as the last week is so frighteningly proving, we are at serious risk of repeating it. Now, as a Greens MP and a Senator, I'll be frank, I didn't come into politics to agree with Bob Carr and Bob Keating. That wasn't my original plan. But hard politics makes unlikely allies. And the fact that we agree on calling out the recklessness of the AUKUS deal and the AUKUS submarines, the fact we agree proves just how broad the feeling in Australia is against this reckless deal. It proves it. We should be building a safe, peaceful future for Australia and our region. That should be our goal. And instead, the Albanese Labor government is seeking to permanently handcuff us to the United States military's aggressive warfighting plan. Its focus is a handcuff for the Australian Treasury, the Australian people, and for the Australian military. We're being taken to the next war, paid for by us, at the unquestioning direction of the United States. How can that be seen as anything other than a complete surrender of our sovereignty? And it is astounding that the Albanese government has officially adopted a hand-me-down coalition war plan. Like, they have become the coalition on this. And they have jettisoned decades of work from Labor grassroots members towards a more independent national stance. And they have jettisoned any pretense of a foreign policy based on peace and diplomacy. This is a national strategic surrender by federal Labor to the federal coalition, and it's to their eternal shame that they've done this. Unless this deal is reversed, Prime Minister Albanese will go down in history as the Prime Minister who drove us towards a war we never chose and no Australian wanted. At least he'll go down in history, provided after that there's someone around to actually write the history. Because that's the scale of the decision making we're facing. That's what defence experts are telling us. That this war, not by our choosing, taken there by the United States, that this war may well escalate into a global catastrophe. You heard that from Lawrence earlier today, directly from the inside of the United States. So first, let's deal with the big lie behind this AUKUS deal. It is a lie to claim that these nuclear submarines are about defending Australia. They are all about projecting lethal force into the South China Sea. And that's worth repeating, and repeating often. These submarines are not designed to defend Australia. They are designed specifically to threaten China. And isn't any one that China responds negatively to that? That's their purpose. And there is no question that will inflame regional tensions and further drive a regional arms race. And twice this week, I was asked by senior journalists, including on the ABC, that given the Greens don't support the $368 billion AUKUS submarine deal, what would the Greens do to prevent China invading Australia? I was asked that by people that pretend to be credible on this space. But there's not one Defence Forces and the global weapons manufacturers. And within our region, Indonesia, the Philippines and Malaysia have all expressed very real concerns. And we are getting in this deal at best, in 30 years at best, 8 submarines. And we are fundamentally damaging our international reputation, our sovereignty, and our relations with almost every neighbour in the region who don't want us to do this. How does that make us any safer? It doesn't. It makes us isolated with just one friend in the region. And we shouldn't ignore the United Kingdom. They have no strategic presence in the region. We lose friends with every regional neighbour. We lose decades and decades of building connections to get 8 subs and a handgun commitment to the United States military. That is almost the definition of making us unsafe and surrendering our sovereignty. So we need an independent defence force designed to protect Australia, not to threaten our neighbours, but to protect Australia. And that does not involve a $368+ billion spending splurge that literally is designed to enmesh us for decades to come in the United States military's war-making plans. Because it's a fact, we will not be able to crew, maintain, or deploy any of these nuclear submarines assets without the express prior permission of the United States.
It is called China-Australia Talks China, replete with examples of stories loaded into our media with the help of security agencies to create the sense of a Chinese threat. And sometimes, of course, Chinese behaviour fits mistreatment of Uyghurs, for example, in Western China. But everything was subject to almost elaborate exaggeration, lead-ups like that. One of our most experienced editors is someone called Max Such. He edited the Financial Review, he edited the Old National Times. He investigated this China panic in the media. He said there's an editor he witnessed many campaigns in the Australian media over the years. He had never witnessed any as professional as the China panic campaign unleashed in our media from 2017. Malcolm Turnbull, of course, introduced foreign influence legislation from the courts. It's been on the course for 5 years. It hasn't produced a single example of Chinese foreign influence. But, like for instance, the US Study Centre in Sydney, or ASPI, Australian Security Policy Institute, which receives funding from the State Department and American armed countries, as pure examples of foreign influence seeking to shape Australian foreign policy that deserve the media in Australia. And talk about another lobby, which is the best funded, most generously staffed foreign influence lobby you could imagine operating in Australia today. To see the Palestinian voice gets plotted out at every opportunity. So, the deliberate China panic in the media, where was it coming from? Who was driving it? Why were some journalists being favoured with a special link, be it the home of Chiquette Bustlane at 6 in the morning tomorrow? And you can have an exclusive about a raid on the home of a member of the New South Wales Upper House. That was 3 years ago. Chiquette Bustlane's political career was destroyed. Not a finding has been made against him. Anyone would have assumed as that story was packaged and massaged and presented exclusively to Nick McKenzie of the Sydney Morning Herald and 60 Minutes that Chiquette Bustlane had linked himself to become an agent of Chinese influence, as if a whip in the New South Wales Upper House was capable of knowing anything that would be of interest to Chinese agents taking interest in Australia's geostrategic position. Absolutely. I could go on. We brought these things to, we Australia is still a very good ally, prepared to take the fight with America side by side in the Middle East. But Americans are beginning to doubt that Australia is such a strong ally in Asia. I think that was a seminally important article. And I believe that the biggest factor in this China panic, driving this consistent mass argument in Australian media, were people in Australian security agencies who believed their counterparts in Washington were disappointed and fearful that we might not go all the way with the US against China and wanted this corrected. I believe, without being remotely a conspiracy theorist, that this is a large part of the journey this country has been on. Professor of Industrial and International Relations at Chicago University, John Mearsheimer, an advocate of American national interest in guiding foreign policy, said when he was in Australia a few years ago, the opportunity to meet him, I heard this from him directly, he said the same thing publicly. He said, America will never allow its primacy to be challenged. We showed in World War I, defeating Kaiser's Germany. We showed in World War II, defeating two rival empires. We've shown in defeating the Soviet Union that we will never allow our predominance to be challenged. The alternative, friends, is that there is room for multiple sovereignties on this planet. And that if there could be a detente between Brezhnev's Soviet Union invading Afghanistan, supporting the North Vietnamese invasion of Cambodia, presiding over an arms buildup, and a detente between Brezhnev's Russia and America under Nixon. There can be the detente between China under Xi and America under Biden or even Trump. Two, restate our commitment to international law and treaties that prohibit the threat or use of force against other countries. Three, we need to advise our allies that Australia will not join a US coalition for war against China. And finally, we are standing here to remember opposition leader Simon Green's promise to the Parliament on the 20th of March, and the anniversary is tomorrow, on the 20th of March 2003, he promised that as Prime Minister, he would never allow Australian policy to be determined by another country, never commit to an unnecessary war when peace was possible, and never send Australians to war without telling them the truth. This is what we want our current government to remember on this day. Thank you.
School, we are taught that the Prime Minister, the Governor-General, the Federal Executive Council make the decision to go to war. But the reality is that the major parties have abandoned this process now in favour of a system that allows the Prime Minister and the Defence Minister to wage war unilaterally without any checks or balances or direct safeguards. It's this process that has led Australia again and again into war after war without any clear goals. Millions have been killed in places like Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria. Now, people in positions of power are able to do this because they make use of a vague amendment in the Defence Act, which says that the Defence Minister has the ability to give orders on the general administration of the Defence Force. Now, it was an amendment that was clearly not intended to give the Defence Minister or the Prime Minister the unilateral power to wage catastrophic wars across the world. It is in fact a stunning example of the cowardice of the Labour members of this committee who have made an election promise to hold an inquiry into this process, an inquiry which found massive problems with the current system, and yet then to refuse to recommend any substantial changes to that broken system, regardless of the reality that a majority of submissions overwhelmingly called for significant reform. Now, the Greens have long held the position that the decision to send ADF personnel overseas must be made by the Parliament and by extension by the people of Australia. If a mother has to worry every night that her child is deployed in Iraq, even though that child wasn't even born in 2003, then the very least a local MP can do is take the responsibility of being there and explaining why they had to go.
Across 3 continents, leaders broadcasting a joint press conference over afternoon tea, dinner and breakfast.
Well, good morning from Australia.
With a global message.
Today we're taking another historic step to deepen and formalize cooperation among all 3 of our nations. And the first task of this partnership will be to help Australia acquire a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines. The future of the Indo-Pacific will impact all our futures.
Now trilaterally tightly bound.
Thank you, Boris. I want to thank that fellow down under. Thank you very much, pal.
A new diplomatic club has been launched.
And so, friends, AUKUS is born. AUKUS. It sounds strange that all these acronyms, but it's just a good.
Nuclear submarines were top of the agenda for Defence Minister Richard Marles during a series of high-level meetings in Washington. Mr. Marles says he had constructive talks with the US National Security Advisor before meeting Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin in the Pentagon.
You do with all these people who want to exert duty of influence over others. So again, I think we need to get away from the hypocrisy and not look at this as just those people, the enemy, doing this. I think we need to hold up a mirror and look at ourselves as well. You know, what role has the United States played in wars since the Second World War? The United States is virtually never at peace. So can the United States preach about the need for peace? And the answer to that would be no, probably they can't. Can Australia preach about the need for peace? Well, Australia has done some very, very good things, and yet when Australia goes to join every US war, practically without exception, without considering the merits of that war, without considering is this really going to help peace or is it not, then we've got a lot of thinking to do about our own role, and Australia could do a lot more to promoting a more peaceful world. Your bomb fuel, what is that going to do to the non-proliferation regime? And the answer is it's going to be very, very bad in terms of nuclear weapons proliferation. So our neighbours are deeply concerned.
Good evening. China has threatened to use all necessary measures to achieve the reunification of mainland China and Taiwan.
In the waters of Taiwan, China is carrying out its biggest live fire drills to date, starting in the wake of US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan and showing no signs of easing. All week, the Australian government had been careful not to comment on the Speaker's visit, but on Friday, Foreign Minister Penny Wong did comment on these drills, joining her US and Japanese counterparts in labelling them disproportionate and destabilising.
From the trajectory of the development of Chinese military technology and Chinese scientific technology, that by 2040, 2050, Australian submarines planning to sail through Indonesian waters up through the Philippines and the South China Sea to the East China Sea to sit outside Shanghai are going to be facing a very different underwater surveillance
government as well as the Australian government. They ought to be also independent of the influence of the arms industry, because the arms industry is so closely enmeshed in this secretive relationship with governments that they can't really be priced apart. So if an organisation such as ASPI wants to maintain the perception, which is what it says in its charter, the perception as well as the reality of its independence, it needs to take heed of that and consider that perhaps being sponsored by arms industry isn't a good idea.
Former Defence Minister Stephen Smith and former Defence Chief Sir Angus Houston provides a sense of urgency, finding the Defence Force is not ready to deal with the increased threat of conflict in the region as a result of China's massive military build-up.
In the circumstances that we now face, that defensive posture is no longer fit for purpose.
Focusing on 6 priority areas, including the acquisition of nuclear-powered submarines and larger missile strike range.
We then have to think about the really serious question of how do we handle nuclear safety issues, not just at sea.
I can't know whether what half is put out is true. I'm willingly to believe that the Russians are quite indiscriminate about how they kill and so forth.
And the buck stops with me.
You might wonder, why am I wearing chains around my neck? Why? Because it represents, in my views, the state of humanity at the moment. Chains to an extractive industrial era that we simply must break free of in order to survive. It represents the idea that our present security strategy keeps us chained to the past, chained to the extractive industrial economy with a security strategy designed to protect a system that is in fact the source of our future insecurity. So to use a metaphor, humanity's like a ship that's in a harbour, and we're anchored tightly with these big heavy chains, and they're holding the ship very steady when it's calm. The chains have been there so long holding us in place that they've become rusted. So even if you want to bring up those chains and move on, you can't. The problem is that just outside this safe harbour where we're chained, something's happening out there. A big tsunami's on its way, and it will completely submerge the ship. So obviously the safest thing to do is drop the chains or cut the chains and get out of the harbour, get away from the coastline. But we don't. We stay stagnant, stuck. And we hear these whispers and little glimpses of warnings from outside this safe harbour.
No more gas, no more oil, keep the carbon in the soil. No more gas, no more oil, keep the carbon in the soil.
So just this week, Peter Carter, one of the senior scientists from the IPCC, his latest assessment was that by 2100 we're on track for 3.2 degrees, which he says is an uninhabitable planet. The only possible option is transformation. In the decade between 2020 and 2030. But I'm sure that you can see that we can't do the massive transformation that we need to save ourselves and prepare for major warfare at the same time. They're incompatible.
They talk about the climate crisis, doing nothing, doing nothing. Their plans are full of compromises, no decisions, no big visions. We don't own the earth, we've only borrowed from tomorrow, from tomorrow. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The measures we are taking are actually really bad. For decades we have known that the climate's gonna change, but people still ignore it. It's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Children realize that something's wrong there. Happy school strike, happy school strike. Any climate change is very unfair. Someone's profits are others' losses. Those who cause it are the least affected. Well connected, well protected. Those who suffer most have little choices. Unheard voices, unheard voices. For most people it's not funny and things are getting rough. The measures we are taking are really not enough. I find it hard to tell them that we are much too slow in cutting our emissions. It's a very, very mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Woo! Very, very mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Mad world.
My assessment is that something called the hyperthreat, the hyperthreat is global warming plus all forms of environmental degradation and destruction put together. In other words, the unravelling ecosystem and climate system together presents a new form of violence, and that over this century it will be the dominant form of killing, violence, destruction and harm. It's not a scientific or economic governance issue, it's the new way that violence is going to manifest. Going to war makes the hyper-threat stronger.
What do we want?
Climate action!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate action!
When do we want it?
Now!
Every time we put petroleum in our car, that is linked to the Iraq War, it's linked to the death of 500,000 civilians, it's linked to PTSD and soldiers dying from Iraq. Operation Beauty, the aim of that, the mission of that operation, is to protect, restore and strengthen ecosystems. It's to rescue humanity's most important ally in the fight against the hyper-threat, which is nature. Our number one ally, ally one, which is nature, is hanging by a thread at the moment. The more we rescue nature, our mate, the more it can help us. But at the moment it's struggling, it needs our help. Say no, you're not killing us. We are going to protect life. All of our life on this planet deserves to be alive. So get up and fight for it.
We honor the land that we're living on. We honor the land that we're living on. We honor the country and the old ones. We honor the country and the old ones. We sing up country and we sing it up strong. We sing up country and we sing it up strong. For we are all connected as one. For we are all connected as one. We are all connected one. We are all connected as one.
We honor the ones who have gone before.
We honor the ones who have gone before.
We honor the wisdom of the ancient law.
We honor the wisdom of the ancient law.
We sing up country and we sing it up strong.
We sing up country and we sing it up strong.
For we are all connected as one.
For we are all connected as one.
We are all connected as one.
We are all connected as one. We honor the earth and the sea and sun.
We honor the earth and the sea and sun.
We honor the living and the life to come.
We honor the living and the life to come.
We sing very, very mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Mad world. Woo!
There's a rumour doing the traps that AUKUS was a political ruse by ScoMo, a deal cooked up by Scott Morrison to wedge Anthony Albanese. Would Albo say no to ScoMo's surprise treaty with the Brits and the US and be derided as a chicken hawk, as weak on defence, a patsy for China? Or would he back it? Well, Albo had just 24 hours to decide, and he did. He backed it. 24 hours is hardly enough for a deal of this dimension, which will have historical consequences. But the wedge theory is just that, just speculation. But what we do know is that we're stuck with it. AUKUS has put us squarely in the mix for a US war with China over Taiwan. And that $370 billion spend on submarines is the biggest government spend in history. Now, our star columnist, the former submariner and Senator Rex Patrick, has done some outstanding work for us on AUKUS and the submarine debark in waiting. He's pointed out, and he should know he's a submariner, that like the footy team arriving after the grand final, the subs won't be here for years anyway, sometime in the 2030s. They are an enormous cost. It has not been thought through. There's no social licence for nuclear submarines. The debate has not been had. And defence, as Rex points out, has an appalling track record of wasting money on planes that don't fly and ships which need constant repair. As his latest piece points out, the first leg of the deal involves buying second-hand subs, old clunkers or rust buckets, as Rex unkindly calls them. To quote him on previous purchases of second-hand ships from the US Navy, Defence bought rust buckets and spent almost 10 times the purchase cost repairing them. Then he goes into the issues of maintenance and technical issues such as acoustic coating that deteriorates on Virginia-class nuclear submarines. These are the ones which we've agreed to buy. The guts of it is, though, that the boats which are due to arrive sometime in the 2030s, too late for a war, will not help much because we'll only be able to have one or two fully operational second-hand submarines at a time. Where will they be maintained? In the US or perhaps in Perth? How and at what cost? Where will they get the parts? Who knows? Where will they dock? Newcastle or Wollongong? Have we okayed this with the people of Newcastle or Wollongong? Will it make those cities a target? Who knows? But we do know that there has not been a lot of thought going into this. Despite the gargantuan spend, it has not been debated, let alone thought out. We should have invited the French into the alliance, then we could have called it FAUKUS. But then we have already spent $4 billion with the French not buying a submarine.
is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, or everywhere is war. Say war.
Congo sees war. Children are dying. Oh.
Until there are no longer first class, second class citizens of any nation. Until the color of man's skin is of no more significance than the color of his eyes. Everywhere is war. War. Everywhere is war.
Killing a brother.
War.
Destroying the country.
War.
For nothing.
War.
For nothing. They don't take care of an younger brother. We don't need no more war.
Some winning, some losing, some dying, some crying, some sing. We don't need no more trouble. 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 We don't need no more trouble.
What we need is love to guide and protect us on. If you hope good down from above, help the weak to get strong, yeah. Ooh, you got to stop the war.
We don't need no more trouble. We don't need no more trouble.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us here in Australia for Peace Wave. It's been a great deal of fun for us doing it, and I hope it reaches as many people as can take a lively interest in the subjects that we've been talking about today. They're important, they're critical, they're even existential, you might say. And the more of us take note of what our governments are doing and do our best to change things, the more chance we've all got, quite frankly, of surviving. It's been great to have you, and I'm delighted that you could join World Beyond War for this, and to listen to the views of people like Australians for War Past Reform. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand team. It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Alison, for leading the New Zealand Peace Wave. It's such a great honor to have you and all the contributors. And thank you for trying your best to pull everything together to make to pass the waves from the peace waves from New Zealand. So for this segment, we will end the part 7 momentarily, and then we will proceed to the peace wave of part 8. So for this point, thank you New Zealand and Australia for your peace wave contribution. We will proceed now to peace wave part 8. So for momentarily, we will stop the restreaming and recording to have it set up for part 8. So stay tuned, and would like to greet all the viewers online from World Beyond War and IPB. So we're live now in Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook of World Beyond War and IPB. So thank you for joining us today, and to all the participants here in Zoom room, thank you for joining our Peace Wave 2023. So let me just quick check if we'll have if we will have already our Japan team. All right, so I think our Japan team is on, and our South Korea is on the call already. So again, a peaceful day, peace-loving citizens, global citizens from Japan, South Korea, and all over the globe. Konnichiwa, annyeonghaseyo. Welcome to Peace Wave